You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey folks, it's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the earliest things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you and helps you become better. Most of your other family, they're just bad influences, or some of them might be, and they might help you do worse. That or they'll sabotage you because they don't really love you. They just, you can't pick your family. But the beautiful part is the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you. It cares about you. It wants to hold you and hug you and tuck you in at night and read you bedtime stories. Not really, but we kind of do that through the show, don't we? We read you bedtime stories through authors on how to improve your life and how to feel better. And that'll make you sleep at night. Boy, the shit that I can make up on the spot. Go to Goodreads.com where it says Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com where it says Chris Voss. Chris Voss won the TikTokity, and sometimes I just amaze myself at the bullshit. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today we have another amazing young man on the show, and of course, he's not full of shit. It's just me. He's the author of the latest. The audience is like, yeah, it's Chris is full of shit. His book just came out March 11th, 2025. It is entitled Born or Made. Fear is a liar. Defeat is overrated. Shots fired over here, folks. Larry G. Dix II is joining us on the show. We're going to get into it with him, his insights, and all the goodies and knowledge that he has to, once I said, make your life better so you can sleep better at night. See, because we care. That's what we do here. Larry G. Dix is a former yard dog turned founder, investor, best-selling author, and host of the Born or Made podcast. He built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up without shortcuts or a silver spoon, just grit, faith, and relentless work ethic. He's the founder of Apex, a leading truss manufacturing company that will serve as the president of the Structural Building Components Association beginning in September 2025. Boy, our audience members that are a part of that association will love that. Larry is the author of Born or Made.
Yeah.
We have a huge contingency, by the way, of audience that listens to the show from that association. Larry is the author of Born or Made, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated, a best-selling book that explores real stories, failures, and strategies behind what it takes to thrive in business. The book blends hard-won wisdom, lessons from industry leaders, and practical tools for entrepreneurs navigating the highs and lows of building something real. Welcome to the show. How are you, Larry?
I am doing great. How are you today, Chris?
I am doing excellent. Give us your .coms. How can people find out more about you on the interwebs?
Everything is pretty much tied to, not pretty much, is Born or Made podcast, which is all my podcast, right? I have a website for that. And then also LarryGDixII.com. It's known as the second, but it's II.com. And I've got them all covered. I've got Larry G. Dix, LGD, II, you name it. But on every format of social media, it's under that. Larry G.
That's a lot of dicks, Larry.
It is a lot. Yeah. I don't get to say that very often. A lot of anything.
And for the record, folks, that is spelled Larry Dix. So make sure
everybody's supposed to know that automatically.
Exactly. There'll be links on the Chris Voss Show. But just to make sure, because, if you spell it differently, you might get a different Google result. You
could get, and I've not checked that when I probably should. It could be very interesting.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend anything weird on the internet. There's some wormholes you just don't want to open.
Don't want to open, yeah.
But also, our sponsor today is the Chris Voss OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so Larry, give us a 30,000 overview. What's in your new book?
So what I'm trying to do is just help people to understand that entrepreneurship is hard. I kind of started down this path when my mom died, and I started kind of realizing, I didn't know as much about my, growing up and what I was like. I started trying to delving into this deep thought, and I realized that it was hard what we were trying to do. And I wanted to give people life stories of the challenges, the physical, mental, and financial challenges that entrepreneurship really does bring. Because what you see in social media today is everybody's riding around in private jets, eating caviar and lobster tails. And that's just not the way it is in the real world. 99% of us don't make the 1%. And I didn't know this till just the other day that, 80% of the businesses out there are under 5 million a year in revenue. And so I just kind of want to bring a reality check to people, but that if you can be a guy like me that graduated 142 out of 147 in his high school class, that you can eventually get to something that whatever you determine is successful.
Yeah.
And just don't listen to all the bull crap that you hear out there. This is a freaking hard job.
Yeah. And it is hard. A lot of people, sadly, what's that old adage that, people don't see. It seems like in this world, in this Instagram sort of everyone's successful, and sometimes you don't even know if they're really successful. I've known people
that's right.
List all sorts of success and fodder that makes it look like they're successful, and they're living out of their car. You find out, but the other thing is too is people celebrate the win, but they don't celebrate the blood, sweat, the tears, as you say, the grit. Those lonely nights when you're working 24/7, maybe you wish you were with your family, or wish you had a family, or you wish, I've done those things where I'm up in the middle of the night trying to get my business to work, get the wheels, down on the road, and trying to make a profit or more profit. And it can be lonely because, the buck stops with you. Like there's no one you can really be like, well, it's probably the other guy's fault. Wait, there's no one behind me.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. And I write about this in the book is that, everybody wants to see you at the peak, right? Mm-hmm. But you're either going into the abyss or you're coming out. And nobody sees that part. They just see you when you're up there going, oh, I got to win. And you have a lot more losses than you ever have wins.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody wants to celebrate that. My dad always used to say, and still does, he's like, everybody wants what you have. They're just not willing to go through what it takes to get there.
That's a really true story because let's see what it was. There's a misshot quote that I got. Here's a good example, I think, that nails it what you just said. This is from Michael Jordan, famed basketball star. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over in my life, and that's why I succeed. And you're right. It's sometimes it's throwing a lot of shit up against the wall to see what sticks. A lot of A/B testing, a lot of sometimes I always liken it to like a dial on a safe, and you're constantly trying to safe crack it, and you're trying to find the right formula, the right innovation, the right analogy to get that safe open. And you can spend a lot of time clicking those numbers, and then one day just poof, it's almost like magic happens, and the lights come on and the safe opens, and then you find out it was just Al Capone's empty safe.
yeah and there's a lot of truth because you finally get to those wins, and then you're like, okay, and it's gone 30 seconds later. And because then the phone rings and some breaks in your manufacturing facility, and you got to decide to make a $10,000 investment that you were just winning a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And that's where, that's why I talk about defeat is overrated. You have to have the losses to appreciate the wins.
It's true.
And they will outnumber them unless you're just one guy to get. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't know about you, but it hasn't happened for me. And there are nights I wake up at 3:00 in the morning, and that brain gets fired up, and you don't know whether you're making payroll on Friday, picking up checks and using company, personal credit cards.
Yeah.
That's the stories that I try to talk about with people. And, people don't, and then they see you. I'm 62 years old, and now everybody's like, oh, wow, you're such a success. I'm like, yeah, I started working when I was 11.
You and
right?
me, man.
I mean, it's like,
papers.
It's like, mine was stomping cotton in South Texas in the middle of the freaking heat and making $1.25 an hour and having, 15-ton combines come up beside you and dump stuff, which, you and I would go to jail for doing today.
Oh, cotton.
And they were dumping them beside you, and you jump down in them. And, my buddy fell off the top of a tractor, one of these trailers, and it was 12 foot in the air. I mean, we're like, dang, Andy, that hurt, didn't he? He's like, I can't breathe. For my whopping $60 that 2 weeks.
So let me ask you this on a couple things. Born or Made, that's the title of the book. It's the title of your podcast. What does that mean for you? And what do you want people to come away with an understanding of that?
I'm trying to just dive in, like I was talking about with my mom, is like, was I born this way? Like she said that I can remember since I was 3 years old, I was a salesman. I was talking to adults. But then I was made into this person, I believe. That I'm a born or made guy. I think you're a combination, you're born with certain gifts, and then you're made through the trials and tribulations of that life. And I just learned how to become extremely disciplined through hard knocks and getting my butt kicked and making hard decisions. Like I would never let that happen again. And that's the purpose of it. Is I interview these amazing founders of companies, and you ask them the final question: do you think you're born or made? And some people say born, some say made, most say in between. And I had one the other day that said built, and I'm like, boom, that's the first time I ever heard of that one.
Wow.
So it's just trying to get people to start thinking about this stuff and putting some real thought into the fact that, we are born as individuals, but life makes us into who we are.
Yeah.
And there's some people that believe they are made, and I wouldn't argue with them, is like some of these artists and some of these people that are really have unique jobs. And that's what we talk about. And it's very fun. It's actually very enjoyable.
I would say, I don't know anyone who's a born leader. I think that's developed. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I always used to say me and my brother were born kings because we always had a certain swagger about us, and we questioned things. And just very early on, I figured shit out. I don't know, whatever. But I was definitely made. I mean, one of the things that happened to me was when I was raised. I was raised in a religious cult, and it was very repressive. And I spent a lot of time learning to question reality, because somehow I had, like I said, some sort of awareness. I don't know what it is, but I was just born, like at 3 years old, I knew the church was full of shit. And that's one of my first thoughts that I ever remember having. But the hazing that I took from questioning the cult, from challenging the thoughts, from trying to see outside the box, and unfortunately being stuffed into a box where I didn't have any sort of other awareness until people like George Carlin came along and other people that, had different thoughts. And so for me, it was a constant battle and fight over this data and questioning things. And, I really would love to have skipped that whole experience in childhood. That created an innovative entrepreneurial mindset in me, always questioning things, always seeking answers, always trying to innovate, always trying to find what the truth is, what reality is, trying to get out of my own scotomas, my own blind spots. And so that really shaped me. And then gave me a lot of, and I guess somewhere in all the crisis and trauma, I picked up ADHD, which is a great CEO disease to have.
I'm all about it. I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, they were putting me on Ritalin when I was in the first grade, and my mom took me off of it. She's like, he's not even the same kid. And would have been 1969 or 70.
Yeah.
They were trying to pump us full of that stuff. And now I'm just like, I think it's fantastic.
It's great if you can master it. It's great if you can master it.
Well, I think that's where you got to be busy. You got to stay in there. I write about, on my website, Larry G. Dix II, and, 7 shifts that got me unstuck. And it's that process of what you're going through, you're talking about through your life is, and we'll never get to test this, but it'd be interesting to see if you came up in a different childhood, if you wouldn't still be the same guy. I argue that you would. I think you're born with these traits that you were probably going to be an alpha leader of some sort. And you just honed them in a way that over time, and you may have done it differently if you'd have had a different environment in 10 years. It may have taken you 20 years to get there.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. I don't know. That was such a shaping of me. I mean, that was definitely a blacksmith anvil. I mean, I went through hell and back for 16 years, and to get away from that cult. And I probably still carry some of the psychological scars of it to this day, especially the ADHD. I've often pondered that, like how would my life have been different? And I guess nobody has a pure panaceic, is that a word? Perfect childhood, right? Is there anybody that has perfect sale? So it's interesting how so many different things shape us in life, our stories, our experiences, and then you're like, I'm never going to use this, and then years later, you're like, geez, that was really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting beat up and having some tough life lessons does mold you into where you get to, and it's just a matter. I like to say, to decide whether you're going to be defeated or inspired, and clearly you'd use that as an inspiration for you. So that's the difference too, and maybe that's our ADHD stuff that helps us kind of see that and then go to the next thing instead of just dwelling on it for the next 10 years.
Yeah,
and that
I've
never done that.
Maybe the ADHD thing is that makes us so we don't spend too much time focusing on the pain. We can go squirrel.
Yeah. Now it can screw you up too, because then you got to, oh, that's right, I'm running a business over here. I probably should start focusing on that instead of doing this. And that can be the pitfall.
Yeah. I was doing really well with my ADHD. It had kind of disappeared in my 50s. And then I got checked for low testosterone, and I went and I had it. It was all gone, and I was just enjoying my life and my focus and presence. And then I got testosterone replacement. It came back with a vengeance.
Isn't that? I mean, we don't even talk about that as much now, because like when I go to the doctor, I found out, I started really studying this about 2 years ago. And luckily I had pretty high testosterone, which apparently, like me, if you lose your hair, that's somewhat of an indicator later that you have good testosterone. And it's a huge deal. And I'm big into this wellness and fitness stuff. And I tell you what, I'm all about it. I tell my buddies all the time, you had your testosterone checked? Well, not really. I'm like, you need to freaking get it checked.
Get it checked, boys.
It's legit.
Get it checked. You definitely want to get it checked. It's changed my life. It's brought me back from, I was just a mess and in fog. Back to your book. And the second part of the title, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated. Show me on the dollar where fear hurt you, sir. No, I'm just kidding. Tell us what that means. Fear is a liar, defeat is overrated.
Fear is the one thing that gripped me a lot. It took me till I was 35 years old to make the jump on my business, because I had fear of making sure my 3 kids had roofs over their head, fear of not disappointing my wife, fear of listening to the people around me that say, oh, you're crazy, you have a great job, all these different things. And then you start getting into business and fear gets ramped up. Is like, I always like to say is like, one day I feel like I can run a Fortune 500 company, and the next day I don't think I can run a freaking, lemonade stand. And that's fear. That's doubt. That thing that just constantly is in your head, and trying to constantly work on defeating that. That's where ADHD people, I think, have a huge advantage, because you have fear for 10 minutes and then you think you can conquer the world the next 10 minutes. But it's a roller coaster.
I like your perspective on this, because I'm going to start thinking that way about my ADHD.
I think it's a huge, I mean, think about running 4 or 5, like I've got four different businesses that I'm running, and people are exhausted. They're like, how do you do it? I'm like, that's just how my brain works. I don't want to sit in front of a computer for 12 hours a day. Yeah. I want to be out doing this and mixing it up and, racing cars, or, Sunday night, I'm out there checking on cows, because our water system wasn't working until 8:30 at night.
Wow.
And that's fun, man. That's the stuff that makes you, I'm out there by myself. I spend a lot of time by myself, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But fear grips you. And I went to therapy during the downturn of the housing cycle, and the lady told me this, and I'll never forget this. And listeners need to, if you act like you have a gun pointed to your head, a fake gun, your body reacts like it has a gun to its head. And that's fear. That's all these chemicals that dump out of your brain. And you got to figure out how to get past that and move through. And that's why I called it a liar, because it's freaking stealing from you constantly.
Stealing your life away. Fear paralyzes. It'll lock you in. It'll make it so you can't move. And I have a lot of people that, you probably get this a lot too. They go, hey Chris, I'm going to start my own company just like you. And you're like, okay, cool, man. When you get that launched? And they're like, well, I'm just waiting for the time to be perfect and right. And so I'm just lining up a few things. And you're like, okay, well, perfect. There's never a perfect time. You just got to do it. And and then you'll see them years later, and you're like, hey, how's that working out? And they're like, I haven't started, just waiting for the perfect time.
That literally in my 7, shifts, that's the number one thing, is make a freaking decision, before you're ready. Just get in there and get it done. I have buddies all the time. I was talking to this really smart young man the other day, and I'm like, he's working a full-time job and he's trying to do this deal. He's like, well, I just, when do you think I should do it? I'm like, now. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, if you part-time this thing, you're never going to get there. You've got to, because when you can't feed your family or you have a mortgage payment coming up next, on the 1st, you get real freaking motivated.
You do. You do.
Right?
Yeah.
Payroll on Friday. You will figure it out.
Man. I've done that half-inch thick signing every 2 weeks of payroll checks, and it's $100,000 payroll. Yeah,
and you have to make your tax deposit the next Wednesday, or they charge you 10% penalty. Yeah. That's a pretty big freaking motivator.
Oh yeah,
and that's why it's just make the decision before you're ready. Get in there and get it out. My dad always said, when do you, people wait till they have kids, but they're ready, they'll never have kids. Just have them.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with business. Just get in there and get it done. You will figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the the fear that is fear is gripping people with that.
Yeah, it definitely will. So tell us a little bit about your life. How did you grow up? What were some of the things that shaped you and some of the experiences you had that got you into some of the business and fields you're doing today?
That's a great question. I bought my first dog, a Cocker Spaniel. I don't know why I liked Cocker Spaniels, but my parents let me buy a dog. I named it Million. I'm 15 years old because I'm going to be a millionaire. This is back now. Think about this. This is me and you. We may get to see a magazine. Very rarely do we ever get to see a newspaper, but we see 3 channels, and you kind of start thinking about these people have money. I didn't grow up anywhere where there was money involved, and I just had this deal that I wanted to own a business. And I wanted to be a business guy. We didn't even know what the hell entrepreneurship mean, or entrepreneur didn't exist. And I just kind of was motivated in that direction. I knew I wasn't going to go to college, which was a challenge because I saw my father graduate from college when I was 12 years old. So we had a very high emphasis on this of going to school. Well, I tell my dad I'm not going to do it. And he says, okay, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be a framer, a carpenter. He's like, good for you. So I go and I get this job, and I'm walking across a soccer field where my brother was playing soccer. Soccer was just coming into Texas. And he's this college graduate guy. He works for my dad. He comes up to me and goes, hey, Larry, how you doing? I'm like, great. I just had a good attitude. I was a good kid. And he said, I just want to talk to you about something. I said, what's that? And he said, I just want you to tell you, you're the dumbest. And he called me an MF-er to my face. I'm a 17-year-old kid. This guy's in his 40s or 50s for not going to college. And I'll never forget that. And I was like, dude, I'm going to make more money than you ever thought about making. And I'm thinking this to myself. And I wore that as like this chip on my shoulder for a very, very long time. And, fast forward, I go to work for a lumber company because the guy was bouncing checks because I didn't realize apparently cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol was very prevalent in the construction industry in Texas in 1980. So my dad's pissed. He's like, you need to get a real job. I'm like, yes, sir. So I go on and I move to the youngest outside salesman in a $100 million company by 21. And I'll never forget this story. I'm sitting in my little bitty office, and this kid comes into me. This is another one of those moments like, aha. And he looks at me and he goes, Larry, he goes, you just got my job. And I said, okay. I didn't know. I'm 21, right? He puts his hand up and he shows me a finger of his ring from the University of Texas. He goes, I have a degree from the University of Texas, and you got my job. And that just another one of those moments where I'm like, it's hard work. It's perseverance. It's determination, showing up early, not on time, on time is late, right? I mean, you were learning this stuff, and those were things that just continued to shape me. And then I started seeing people with nicer cars and living in different houses, and it just kept motivating me to go for that. Because at first I was highly motivated by money. That shifted much, later in life. I really just realized money was a tool.
Yeah.
And I got into the excitement of closing the deal, getting the next job, getting the next new car or something like that. It was just about getting it. And then you get the car and you're like, well, that's okay. They all have 4 wheels. They still burn gas. And there's the more expensive the car is, the higher the maintenance, and it's like, eh. So really, I really found that I just got excited about doing deals all the time. The next sell. I call it making the cash register ring, making that next sell.
The cash register ring. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And that's just kind of shaped me through my life. And then I got into running and athletics, and I was a, average athlete, but I started realizing mental capacity, and I could start outworking these guys. And most people just are average. I mean, 50, I saw a guy yesterday, said 50% of the people out there are average. All you got to do is just show up.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the old line from George Carlin we referenced earlier? think about how dumb the average person is and realize 50% of people are dumber than that. No, but
yeah, I mean,
not to belittle people too much.
No, I'm not trying to do that. We have to have people out there. Yeah, you can. I'm a motivator.
But it's a good aspect to tell people, hey, think about it. Am I really applying myself? Am I just being lazy? Am I not going for it? Am I not, putting my fear aside, as you put it, and going after my hopes and dreams? And, people will take and hold themselves back out of, the fear of, well, what if it doesn't work out and all that good stuff. I remember my father, when I was growing up, he had I was raised in Beverly Hills. I was born in Beverly Hills, and we lived next to Bob Barker from The Price is Right. And we walked the dog.
No way.
Yep. And the first Adobe house there's an apartment building next to it. My parents just managed the apartment, so they got free rent. They weren't rich, but my whole world was opulence. It was Rolls Royces on every corner, BMWs, Mercedes Benz. It was all this stuff. Well, my dad was just a cheap kind of a survivor type dude.
Yeah.
He loved VWs, buses. And, he'd always have these he had like 3 janky BMWs, or not BMWs, 3 janky VWs. And, he was always fixing them. They're always just kind of ratty. And one he used for newspaper delivery. He used to own like a franchise of the newspaper coin op machines when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so, I would see his car, and I would see the other cars at every stoplight, and I'd be like, Dad, how come we don't own a Mercedes or BMW or Rolls Royce? And he goes, oh, the bank owns it, and those guys don't really own those cars. The bank owns it. And I was like, okay, well, my dad told me, he wouldn't lie to me, right? And then after asking that question enough and getting enough shit thrown back, finally one day I said to him, does the bank own your car too, Dad? He got really angry. Shut up. I bet. Dealing with things. So I discovered that my dad was full of shit. That was one of the things that helped. But also, that the bank also owned his car. So then I spent the rest of my childhood going, how come my dad has shit? These other people don't. What's the difference? What do I need to do to get that BMW? And eventually I did, several of them. And, it really... having that sort of drive and ambition to see that and want something more really helped, just like you were talking about.
And then be willing to go implement it.
Yeah, go implement it.
And you're going to, as I talk about, the getting unstuck. We all get stuck. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of getting yourself unstuck. And that's something I've tried to really work hard at over the last, multiple years, because you get in these ruts. Even when you get a business and it even becomes successful, you kind of plateau. And it's that, if your business isn't growing, it's dying. My business stayed pretty flat for a long time before I finally realized that, that I wanted more again. Mm-hmm. And I got complacent. It's one thing about being content, but you don't want to be complacent.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to keep it up, man. So let's talk about some of the offerings you have on your website and get that in there. And let's get some plugs in for the podcast too, please.
Yeah, so the 7 shifts that got me unstuck is kind of our big one right now on our website. And we're just trying to help people go through this, trying to figure out about, again, make a decision, right? Stop chasing motivation, things like this. And it just gives you a layout and just gives you some stories to let you understand how that works. Of course, our book's on there, Born or Made. And we are in the process. We'll have another one coming out in October, which will be our second book coming out. And so that one's going to be called Born to Move. And so trying to show people how to start accelerating and doing things. And, if you've got a foundation to build upon that. And we're just out there actually. And then I'm doing keynote speeches now. I've got 10 scheduled by the end of the year, and we're just going out there and really starting to push that so I can get out there and start talking to people and tell them the real truth about entrepreneurship. And, I'm not flying out there in a private jet. That is the cold, hard reality of it. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're building this in that direction. And we just launched the Larry G. Dix II, so that's the one we're shifting a little bit to really start going down this keynote speaking and tools to help entrepreneurs get through this, again, physical, mental, and financial stress that's involved, that you and I both know that other people think they want. They need to understand what it really is. And it's very doable. It's just hard.
Yeah. It's funny. I have, and I get this from Gen Z a lot, but they're always like, yeah, they'll be like, yeah, I want to do what you do, or I want to do this. Tell me how to do it. I'm like, well, here's the hard work. And they're like, oh man, that's a lot of work. That's really hard. And I'm like, how did you get this far in life and not understand that anything of value, anything that is worth having and that is, kind of exclusive or maybe highly valuable, it takes a lot of work. A diamond takes a lot of work to remove from the ground. If it was easy, you could, you pay 5 cents for a diamond in a freaking gumball machine,
and everybody would be doing it.
Everybody would be doing it, and then it would
right.
lose even more value, probably. If it's kind of like fast food, I mean, why don't we pay fast food workers a lot of money? How come they don't get paid like surgeons? Well, everyone can kind of do those jobs. I did them when I was a kid. I worked at Pizza Hut and McDonald's. And, anybody could do them pretty much. But few people can probably pull off brain surgery successfully. Successfully has to be the qualifier there. Because I could probably do brain surgery, but I do a different kind.
There may not be a live patient afterwards, right?
Yeah. I think my intent would not have a live. Anyway, whatever. I'm going to do brain surgery on enemies. Anyway, so people can go to your website. They can sign up for that seven.
Got me unstuck.
There's 7 shifts that got me unstuck. See, I need it because I'm getting stuck there. I just couldn't find.
You're getting stuck.
Tell us about what you guys do on the podcast. Who do you interview, and what sort of conversations you have over there?
We start off with very simple questions. What we try to do is paint a picture, because what you find is most entrepreneurs people see is where they are today. And so what we do is we start off from literally, like if I was interviewing Chris, I'd be like, Chris, where am I talking to you from today? And you'd tell me that. And I'd be like, tell me where you were born. And we just start this process from the moment they're born through grade school, through middle school, through high school, and just kind of seeing these things, how they developed. Did they have certain skill sets? Were they good at school? Were they not good at school? Were they artistic? Were they athletic? And you start seeing these trends in this determination. You start seeing a lot of these people. You find out this, everybody says there's no shortcuts. Every one of these people I interview, and I've done 80, I think number 60 came out today, that they all are hard workers. They never had shortcuts. None of them were ever like, oh, my dad's Bill Gates, and he gave me a couple of $1 million to start a business. These are all people that started with nothing and did this. And it's from artists to people do Nad's underwear. Dan, who's this great entrepreneur, and he's developed this thing because guys have all these microtoxins in them, and he realized that it was because of our freaking underwear have polyester in them. We're running around with chemicals around them, things like that, and just finding these little niche markets, and to health organizations that they're running and doing things like that they develop these apps and things, and you're just trying to figure it out. But there's always the same trend. They never have shortcuts. They all work their butts off. And they have lots of failures and lots of times that they don't think they're going to make it, but they got this self-determination, and they don't listen to their family.
Yeah.
Because, oh, you're taking a big risk. And like, yeah, you don't want to listen to that kind of stuff. And those are the people that we interview. And and the crazy thing is, something I'm learning is 2 things: is drug addicts, alcoholics, and dyslexics make incredible business people when they get sober and they figure out their dyslexia. I mean, if not all 3, but any one of those 3, they are phenomenal business people because they're able to hyper focus on businesses, and they take all that energy that was being attached to, something they were addicted to, and they figure it out, and then they just kill it. I can't tell how many of these guys and gals I interviewed that were, I'm a 12-year-old recovering alcoholic, or I've been sober for 18 years. That's something else that you really find. And then dyslexia is one that I am very interested in. I'm starting to study a lot more. Is once these guys figure this out, it is amazing how well they do in business.
Yeah. It's nailing down all these things that'll make all the difference in the world for you. So as we go out, give people your final pitch out on how to find out more about you, order the book, et cetera, et cetera.
Order the book. You can get that on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. Any kind of book outlet you can go to. You can get Born or Made, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated. Go out there and buy them, folks. It's a great story of what I've accomplished so far. We're real excited about our next one, Born to Move, and we're going to kind of stay on that kind of theory. and just see where this thing takes us. It's a great journey. It's, a guy that literally started as a yard dog and became a founder, and just all the trials and tribulations, all the good things I did, and really all the bad things I did to help. I want to help entrepreneurs not make the same mistakes that I made. And it's like you and I both know, right? You talk to your dad, you can call your dad and ask him something. He's like, well, yeah, I've already made that mistake. Here's how I got around it. So why would go make the same mistake twice? And we're trying to help entrepreneurs with that. And it's freaking hard, but it's worth it if you can get to the other side.
Worth it if you get to the other side. It's. I remember I've talked about this before in the show. There's a gentleman who's, I think, probably 65 to 70, who he's on TikTok, and he sells. He's a broker for commercial planes, or not commercial planes, private planes.
Private. Mm-hmm.
And you may have seen him. He's a kind of distinguished gentleman, English, and I think he's Italian looking. And he's been selling planes for 40 years, or all of his life, pretty much. He got started when he was young. And I remember watching a video of him he did of what he goes through during his day. He works out in the middle of the day, which is kind of interesting. And, how he goes through his day. And he said something really stuck to me one time. He says, really, you would think that after 40 years or whatever, being in this business, that it would just be a cakewalk every day. It would just be the same old, I just do the same thing, right? He goes, every day it's new problems, it's new technology, it's new challenges, it's the new financing, new this, new that. He's like, all really business is problem solving all the time, and it never ends. You're just a problem solver. You're just solving problems today. There'll be problems tomorrow. And he goes, it's funny. They're all new problems. He goes, you would think after 40 years, we'd have this down, but new technology, new whatever, new things you got to learn to stay adapted. And I thought that was a really good analogy. I'm like, we just need to rename entrepreneurs problem solvers. That's all we do all day long.
Yeah. I mean, your phone rings, my phone rings. It's usually a problem. I mean, yeah. I mean, you do, and it is never the same. And you just get in there and get it done. I mean,
it's never like, hey, we just wanted to call you and let you know, everything's fine. It's working great. There's no problems. It's never that check.
Yeah, and my last 20 years of paychecks have cleared. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I said that's a great analogy.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was really enjoyable. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And to you as well. Give us your .coms as we go out one last time so people can look you up.
Larry, we'll do LARRYGDIXII.com, and then bornormadepodcast.com. And then all of those are on every social media, LarryGDixII.com. And you reach out to us, we will answer your questions, and we will help you, and we'd love to help you out any way we possibly can.
Born or Made, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated, out March 11th, 2025. Thanks, Larry, for being on the show. Thanks to audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity and all those crazy places in it. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should